But not everything is jokes and celebration. On the horizon, there are challenges we cannot ignore. For example, the situation of some players in the squad continues to generate uncertainty. Frenkie de Jong, this midfielder who seems to have the ball glued to his foot, remains the subject of rumors. Although Flick considers him untouchable, some say a dazzling offer from a Premier League club could change things. And then there's the case of Ronald Araujo, the Uruguayan defender who is like a tank in defense. His contract extension is signed, but some English media insist that Chelsea is willing to do anything to get him. For now, Barça does not seem willing to let go of its pillars, but in football, you never know. And while rumors come and go, the club continues to work on other fronts. One of the most talked about topics is the marketing strategy. With the new Camp Nou under construction, Barça is looking for ways to maximize revenue. There's talk of special events like concerts or Legends matches to attract more fans and generate additional income. There are even rumors that the club is negotiating with a tech company to install interactive screens in the stadium, where supporters could watch replays, see real-time stats, and even order a beer from their seats. Imagine watching LAMINE YAMAL dribble, clicking to order an Estrella Damm, and having it delivered right to you. That, Kules, is the future. But let's get back to the present. The Trincão sale has also had an impact on the team's morale. The players, who are well aware of the news, know this money means stability. And in a team where the average age is one of the lowest in Europe, that's key. Guys like Cubarsí, Bald, or GAVI need to feel that the club is solid so they can focus on their game, and with Flick at the helm, the feeling is that this team can go further. The German has brought a discipline reminiscent of the Luis Enrique era, but with a more modern, more German, how to put it? Like he studied the manuals of Cruyff and Guardiola and decided to write his own. Let's talk for a moment about the rivals, because Barça doesn't play alone. In Spain, Atlético de Madrid is giving everyone a hard time with a Griezmann who seems to have found the fountain of youth. And in Europe, Pep's Manchester City remains the team to beat with a Holland who just keeps scoring. But Barça, with this economic boost and a team that's starting to hit its stride, fears no one. The Champions League is just around the corner, and Kules are already dreaming of magical nights at the Camp Nou. Because even though the stadium isn't finished yet, the matches at Montjuic have shown that the Blaugrana passion carries its magic wherever it goes. And while the supporters dream, the executives don't stop. In the club's offices, they're exploring new revenue streams. For example, there's talk that Barça is negotiating with an urban clothing brand to launch an exclusive line of merchandise, t-shirts and hoodies that blend Kules style with Barcelona's street aesthetic. The idea is to attract younger fans, who consume more and more content on platforms like TikTok or Instagram. And speaking of social media, the club has hired a team of content creators to produce viral videos showing the players' daily lives. Imagine GAVI taking on a TikTok challenge or Lewandowski trying to speak Catalan. That, Kules, is pure gold for the networks. By the way, if all of this has you hooked and you want to keep living the Blaugrana passion with us, subscribe now, because you won't find these stories in any news broadcast, and what's coming is even bigger. On the sports front, the next match against Villarreal is the big test. The Yellow Submarine is always a tricky rival with a Marcelino who knows how to make life difficult for Barça, but with Rafinha in a state of grace, Lewandowski smelling blood in the box, and a Yamal who seems to be playing with a PlayStation controller, the Kules have reasons to be confident. Additionally, Flick has worked on new tactical variations like a 4-2-3-1, which allows PEDRI to move with more freedom and GAVI to press aggressively. If the team continues like this, no one can stop them. And while the pitch prepares for battle, the offices remain in a state of excitement. The Trincão sale isn't the only move the club has in mind. There are rumors that Barça is exploring the South American market in search of new gems. Word is, there's a young Argentinian striker wreaking havoc at River Plate and a Colombian midfielder who has the club scouts charmed. Because while La Masia is the crown jewel, Barça knows talent has no borders, and with the Trincão money, there's room to dream of new signings. One of the juiciest episodes in this saga, and one that Galán did not fail to highlight, is the Nico Williams affair. Yes, the young athletic club winger that Barça dreamed of signing this summer. According to the complaint, Tebas allegedly met with athletic club executives during the negotiations for Williams, and during that meeting, he shared Barça's financial details that could have influenced the failure of the operation. Picture the scene: Tebas, with his characteristic intensity, dropping Barça's financial information while athletics executives take notes as if they were in an economics class. Athletic, by the way, didn't stay silent and confirmed that the meeting took place, though they claimed it was about financial fair play in general. Sure, and I believe they only talked about the weather and Pinksos. This episode, according to Galán, is not just another breach of confidentiality but a low blow that may have cost Barça a star signing. And if this gives you chills, don't go anywhere, cules, and subscribe, because you won't see this in any news broadcast. But who is this Miguel Galán, who has become the scourge of Spanish football executives? For those who don't know him, Galán is an electrical engineer and law graduate who seems to have a radar for detecting irregularities. His track record includes not only the disqualifications of Villar and Rubiales but also a constant crusade for transparency in sports. In an interview on Onda Cero, Galán didn't mince words and called Tebas a dictator, claiming that his habit of stepping on the toes of big clubs must stop. Galán says he has nothing personal against Tebas, with whom he has even collaborated in the past against other executives, but that his current behavior resembles too closely that of those they criticized before. Meanwhile, at Barça, the reaction has been rather lukewarm. Joan Laporta and his board have preferred not to stoke the fire, maintaining a cordial relationship with Tebas. Despite the friction, this may come as a surprise, as Laporta is not exactly known for keeping quiet, but it seems the president has opted for diplomacy, perhaps because the club needs La Liga's approval to register players and pursue its economic plans. Let's remember that Barça has navigated turbulent waters with financial fair play, and any direct confrontation with Tebas could complicate things further. In fact, in the past, the club has already reached agreements with La Liga to soften economic demands in exchange for dropping legal actions, as in the case of the 2023 levers. So, while the socios are furious, the board seems to be playing chess, while Galán and the 93 cules go on the offensive. The impact of this complaint is not limited to the offices. On social media, Barça supporters are divided. On one side, there are those who applaud Galán and the 93 socios for standing up to Tebas, tired of what they see as an abuse of power. On the other, there are those who think this war could harm Barça more than help it, since, at the end of the day, it's La Liga that holds the reins when it comes to player registration. On X, formerly Twitter, opinions are boiling. Some call Tebas big mouth and celebrate the complaint, while others warn that Barça shouldn't stir up more trouble when its economy remains an unsolved puzzle. What's clear is that this soap opera has everyone talking, and for good reason. Now, what can happen from here? Several scenarios are possible. The best-case scenario for Galán and the socios would be for the CSD to forward the complaint to the TAD, and for the TAD to rule that Tebas committed serious offenses, which could lead to his disqualification. This would be an earthquake in Spanish football, as Tebas has been a central figure for years, for better or worse. If this happens, La Liga would have to find a new president, and the landscape of Spanish football could change radically. On the other hand, the CSD could decide that the evidence is insufficient or that the offenses aren't serious enough, and Tebas could get away with just a warning, as in 2024. There's also the possibility that the case drags on like a match that goes to penalties, with months of legal back and forth keeping everyone on edge. For Barça, the consequences are also uncertain. If the complaint succeeds, they might feel vindicated and gain ground in their power struggle with La Liga. But if it fails, they could find themselves in an uncomfortable position, with a board that avoided direct conflict and socios who acted on their own. There's also the question of reputation. Barça has already had enough negative headlines with its economic problems, and this situation could add more noise to a narrative they don't need. Not to mention that if Tebas emerges unscathed, he could tighten the screws on the club even more in terms of financial fair play. It's like playing roulette. You could hit the jackpot or lose everything in one spin. Meanwhile, Tebas doesn't seem to be trembling in his office. The man is known for his ability to weather storms, and this wouldn't be the first time he's emerged from a complicated situation. In past interviews, he has justified his actions by saying that confidentiality is not absolute and that sometimes information must be shared for the good of football. An explanation that, for many cules, sounds more like an excuse than solid reasoning. But Tebas is a tough nut to crack, and he's surely preparing his defense like a lawyer in a courtroom drama. At its core, this mess reflects something bigger. Spanish football is at a moment of maximum tension. Between clubs' economic problems, disputes over financial fair play, matches abroad, yes, that plan to play in Miami that everyone's talking about, and power struggles between institutions, it seems no one agrees. And in the middle of all this, Barça, with its history, its supporters, and its 93 brave socios, continues to fight for its place at the top, both on and off the pitch. So, Jules, here we are in the eye of the storm, waiting to see how this story unfolds. Will Tebas fall? Will he stay on his throne? Or will this just be another chapter in the endless telenovela of Spanish football? The only sure thing is that the show is guaranteed, and not precisely on the pitch. In the meantime, keep the passion alive, keep supporting Barça, and if you want to stay up to date with every twist in the story, subscribe to the channel, because this is more exciting than a derby in the final minutes. Jules, we remain at the heart of this football earthquake, with Blaugrana supporters still digesting the shock of the complaint against Javier Tebas. The atmosphere is tenser than a match against Madrid at the Bernabeu, and the mood in Spanish football resembles a powder keg ready to explode. But let's not get carried away solely by Jules passion. Let's put this story under the microscope, because there are juicy details that deserve to be revealed, as if we were analyzing a controversial play at the bar. There's no replay or fast-forward here. Let's break down the layers of this story with that informative touch that doesn't lose sight of Blaugrana pride, but without forgetting a hint of humor to keep us from drowning in so much drama. Let's start with the man at the center of this storm, Miguel Galán. This lawyer and electrical engineer isn't just a guy with a resume that seems straight out of a superhero movie. He's a character who seems to enjoy controlled chaos, like a conductor who knows exactly when to crash the cymbals. Galán is no novice when it comes to challenging football's power brokers. In addition to his victories against Villar and Rubiales, he has been involved in legal battles ranging from questioning elections at the Spanish Federation to flagging irregularities in the management of sports funds. His nickname, Querelator, is no joke. It's recognition of his skill in finding loopholes in the system and pointing out where it hurts. But what drives him to go after Tebas with such fury? Some say he's a genuine defender of transparency, a knight in shining armor fighting for the values of sport. Others, more cynical, whisper that Galán also knows how to stay in the spotlight, and a complaint against the president of La Liga is a sure way to make noise. Either way, his crusade has rallied 93 Barça socios to his cause, and that's no small feat. Let's talk about these 93 socios, because they are the cool heart of this story. We're not talking about a group of friends who got together in a bar after a match to sign a paper. These are committed supporters, the kind who wear the Barça crest tattooed on their souls and have decided to take a stand. Picture the scene. A form circulating among socios, probably shared in WhatsApp groups, supporter forums, or even in the stands of the Camp Nou while the team was playing. Each signature is a declaration of war, this far and no further, directed at Tebas. But who are these socios? We don't have concrete names, as Galán has maintained confidentiality. Ironic, isn't it? Considering he's accusing Tebas of the opposite. But we can imagine a mosaic of cules, from the grandfather who has renewed his season ticket for 50 years to the young fan who knows GAVI's stats by heart. What unites them is the conviction that Barça, their Barça, has been wronged by Tebas' actions, and they're ready to fight for it. Now, how solid is the case that Galán and these socios have built? Making noise is one thing, but winning the battle is another. The complaint is based on 5 alleged serious offenses, and each one is like a missile aimed at Tebas' office. Let's break them down a bit more, because there's plenty to think about. The first, the April 2nd communiqué, is the starting point. On that day, La Liga didn't just say that Barça wasn't complying with financial fair play, it went into specific details. The 100 million euros from VIP boxes, the state of the audits, and even internal communications with the CSD. For Galán, it's as if Tebas opened Barca's accounting books in prime time. Tebas' public statements, where he never tires of repeating in the media that Barça isn't compliant with the 1:1 rule every time he opens his mouth, are like shining a spotlight on the club's economic problems. This doesn't just annoy the cules, it could also affect negotiations with sponsors or players. The third offense is a chapter of its own, the meeting with Athletic Club. Here, things get murkier than a match in the rain. According to Galán, Tebas shared Barca's financial data with Athletics executives at a critical moment, when the Catalan club was trying to sign Nico Williams. The young winger was Barca's summer dream, a player who could bring speed and flair to the attack, but the deal fell through. Galán claims that the information Tebas gave to Athletic may have been the nail in the coffin. Imagine Athletics executives looking at the numbers and saying, "Not even in your dreams, we're not letting Nico go if Barça is in this state." It's a serious accusation, because it implies not just a breach of confidentiality, but possible interference in the transfer market. The fourth offense concerns the withdrawal of La Liga's original statement, which Galán sees as an implicit admission of guilt. And the fifth is the sending of information to the CSD about the Dani Olmo case, an episode that, according to the plaintiffs, caused reputational damage to the club by exposing details that should have remained private. But not everything is black or white. Tebas, who is never one to stay quiet, has his own arguments. In the past, he has defended the idea that confidentiality in football isn't an impenetrable wall. According to him, there are times when La Liga must share information to ensure transparency and compliance with the rules. For example, in the case of the VIP boxes, La Liga argued that Barça hadn't properly registered this revenue, which affected its ability to register players. Tebas could say he was just doing his job, protecting the financial stability of Spanish football. Of course, to the Culés, this sounds like a cheap excuse, like when a referee says he didn't see an obvious penalty. There's also the little detail that Tebas is known for his affinity for Real Madrid, which doesn't help calm the mood in Barcelona. On social media, memes about his alleged bias toward the white team are more common than Rafinha's Jai videos. And speaking of social media, the atmosphere on X is a real battleground. The most fired-up Culés celebrate Galán as if he were the new hero of Barcelonismo, sharing gifs of courtrooms and phrases like, "Tebas out." Others, more cautious, warn that this complaint could be a double-edged sword. If the TAD doesn't rule in Galán's favor, Barça could find itself in an uncomfortable position, with a strengthened Tebas and perhaps even more determined to tighten the screws on the club's economic issues. And let's not forget that Barça isn't exactly swimming in money. Every move in this war must be calculated with surgical precision. By the way, if this drama captivates you as much as it does me, subscribe to the channel, because it's hotter than a derby, and you won't want to miss a single detail. Let's get back to the CSD, because they now have the ball. The Consejo Superior de Deportes, CSD, led by José Manuel Rodríguez Uribes, is examining the complaint with the seriousness of a coach preparing for the Champions League final. This is no minor formality. The CSD has the power to decide whether the case is forwarded to the TAD, and that could mark the course of this story. The TAD, by the way, is no joke. In 2017, it removed Ángel María Villar for breach of neutrality, and in 2024, it already reprimanded Tebas for another controversy. If the court decides that Tebas' offenses are serious, the sanctions could range from a fine to total disqualification, which would be a masterstroke for Galán and the 93 socios. But the process isn't quick. We're talking about months of back and forth with lawyers, documents, and debates that could make a Venezuelan telenovela pale in comparison. And while the CSD analyzes, at Barça, an eloquent silence reigns. Joan Laporta, who is usually more expressive than a stadium announcer during a match, has opted for caution.
Why?
Well, there are several theories. One is that the club needs to maintain a functional relationship with La Liga for matters like player registration. Remember the Dani Olmo case? Barça had to fight for La Liga to accept his registration, and any direct confrontation with Tebas could complicate future moves. Another theory is that Laporta is letting Galán and the socios do the dirty work, keeping his hands clean while others take the lead. It's a risky strategy, because if the complaint fails, the club could be seen as having stoked the fire without wanting to get burned. But it's also a masterstroke, because it allows Barça to stay on the sidelines while the socios carry the flag. We can't forget the broader context. Spanish football is at a moment of change, with debates over TV revenue distribution, matches abroad, that Barça-Villarreal in Miami everyone's talking about, and the Super League looming like a ghost. Tebas has been a key figure in keeping La Liga as one of the strongest competitions in the world, but he's also made enemies due to his combative style. For many, he's a necessary leader. For others, an obstacle holding back football's progress. In Barça's case, the relationship with Tebas is like a marriage of convenience. They need each other, but no one is happy with the situation. Another interesting detail is how this complaint could affect other clubs, because although the focus is on Barça, Tebas has also had friction with Real Madrid, which even filed its own complaint against him in 2024. If the TAD decides to act, it could set a precedent forcing La Liga to be more careful with all clubs' information. Imagine a scenario where every team's financial data is treated like state secrets. It would be a radical change in a football world where rumors and leaks are daily bread, but it could also generate tension, as smaller clubs that depend on La Liga's transparency to compete might feel wronged. And then there's the impact on the supporters. Culés are known for their passion, but also for their demands. These 93 socios represent thousands of fans tired of seeing Barça in the headlines for non-sporting issues. Every piece of news about debts, financial fair play, or leaks is like a stab to Blaugrana pride. But there's also hope. The team is in good sporting form, with young players like LAMINE YAMAL and Pau Cubarsí shining, and a Hansi Flick who seems to have brought order to the dressing room. If the club manages to stay strong on the pitch, this war with Tebas could just be a hiccup on the road to glory. In conclusion, Cules, this story is far from over. We're at a pivotal moment where every decision, every statement, and every legal move could change the course of Spanish football. Galán and the 93 socios have lit the fuse, and now we have to wait to see if it explodes or fizzles out. What's clear is that Barça, with its history and supporters, won't stand idly by. So, keep your Cules spirit high, keep supporting the team, and if you want to follow every chapter of this soap opera with us, subscribe, because it's more thrilling than a 90th minute winner. Cules, we remain with our hearts racing at 1,000 beats per minute, as if we were in the stands at the Camp Nou, waiting for a decisive penalty. This soap opera between the 93 Barça socios, Miguel Galán, and Javier Tebas is more alive than ever. And Spanish football resembles a chessboard where every move can change everything. We're still at the exact point where the fuse is lit, with the Consejo Superior de Deportes, CSD, examining the complaint and Barça watching from the sidelines, like a spectator who knows the next goal could be for or against them. Let's dive deeper into the details of this battle, with that Cule touch that unites us, a bit of humor to keep from drowning in so much drama, and the seriousness this topic deserves, as it keeps all Blaugranas on the edge of their seats. Let's start with the battlefield where this war is being waged, the CSD. This body, led by José Manuel Rodríguez Uribe, isn't just an office full of bureaucrats reviewing papers. It's an institution with the power to pull the strings of Spanish sports, and in this case, it's at the center of the storm. Rodríguez Uribe, a man experienced in politics and sports management, knows he can't take this complaint lightly. This isn't just a grievance from a group of supporters. It's a 50-page document backed by 93 socios from one of the biggest clubs in the world, led by a lawyer who has already toppled giants. The CSD must decide whether Galán's accusations carry enough weight to be brought before the Tribunal Administrativo del Deporte, TAD, and this is no light decision. They're examining every point of the complaint like detectives looking for clues at a crime scene, from the details of La Liga's April 2nd communique to the alleged leaks during the meeting with Athletic Club. And while they analyze, time keeps ticking. Although we're not moving forward in time, we're just detailing the facts. Let's talk about these 93 socios, because their role in this story is more important than it seems at first glance. They're not just names on a form, they're the voice of a fan base that feels its club is under attack from the outside. Imagine the effort required to bring together 93 people willing to sign a formal complaint. This isn't like organizing a backyard barbecue. It takes coordination, commitment, and above all, a huge dose of love for Barça. Some of these socios could be veterans who have seen the club go through worse crises, from the Gaspart era to the dark days of Bartomeu. Others might be young fans who grew up watching Messi's highlights and are now outraged to see the club tangled in non-sporting issues. What's clear is that these 93 represent thousands of Cules who are fed up with seeing Barça's name in the headlines for reasons that have nothing to do with goals or trophies. Their union with Galán is like a stellar alignment. Each brings something unique, and together, they form a team that doesn't give up easily. Now, let's dive into the mind of Miguel Galán, because this man is an enigma wrapped in a lawyer's suit. Galán isn't just someone who files complaints for fun. He has a clear mission, to clean up Spanish football from what he sees as abuses of power. But what drives him to get involved in such a major battle against Tebas? Some might think he's seeking attention, that his nickname, Querelator, isn't just a recognition of his bravery but also his skill at staying relevant. However, those who know him say his motivation goes deeper. Galán has spoken in interviews about his love for football, not just as a sport but as an institution that must be fair and transparent. For him, Tebas isn't just a leader who has made mistakes. He's a symbol of a system that, in his view, places the interests of a few above those of the majority. In this case, Galán sees Barça as a victim of a La Liga president who has crossed red lines, and he's ready to fight to the end, like a striker chasing the winning goal in stoppage time. But not everything is so heroic. There are those who, even among Cules, look at Galán with skepticism. In the virtual stands of X, Twitter, Some supporters wonder if his crusade is truly for the good of Barça or if he's using the club as a springboard for his own ambitions. After all, opposing Tebas isn't just a legal challenge. It's also a way to gain headlines and the support of a fanbase as passionate as Barça's. And here's a little tip, Cules. If this story captivates you as much as it does me, subscribe to the channel, because what's coming is more intense than a Clásico in the final minutes, and you won't want to miss it. Let's get back to the accusations, because each one is like a piece of a puzzle that Galán has carefully assembled. Take, for example, the issue of the Spotify Camp Nou VIP boxes. This €100 million operation isn't just a number. It's part of Barça's plan to clean up its finances and fund the stadium renovation. When La Liga published these details in its April 2nd communiqué, it wasn't just pointing out an alleged violation, it was exposing a key strategy of the club. For the socios, it was as if someone had opened the curtains of their home and shown the world what was inside. Galán argues that this information was confidential and that its release didn't just harm Barça's reputation but could also have affected negotiations with commercial partners. Imagine a sponsor hesitating to sign with a club whose economic problems are on everyone's lips. It's like trying to sell a car while someone shouts that the engine is broken. Another hot topic is the Nico Williams affair. This episode is like an intrigue novel with secret meetings and accusations of foul play. According to Galán, Tebas' meeting with Athletic Club wasn't just a friendly discussion about financial fair play. He believes Tebas shared specific financial data about Barça, which may have convinced Athletic not to let go of their star. Nico Williams, with his speed and charisma, was the dream signing for the Blaugrana attack, and his failed transfer was a blow to the supporters. Galán goes further, saying that Tebas' action was intentional, a way to weaken Barça in the transfer market. Of course, Athletic and La Liga have claimed the meeting was routine, but that doesn't convince the Cules, who see every move by Tebas as an attack on the Blaugrana crest. Then there's the Dani Olmo case, another chapter that deserves its own Netflix series. Olmo's registration was an odyssey for Barça, with La Liga putting up roadblocks and the club racing against the clock to meet economic requirements. Galán claims that Tebas sent a letter to the CSD with confidential information about this case, which not only complicated the registration but also put Barça in an uncomfortable position with the press and supporters. For the complaining socios, this was the straw that broke the camel's back, further proof that Tebas uses his power to pressure the club. It's as if the La Liga president is playing Risk, moving his pieces to keep Barça under control while the Cules try to execute their strategy. But not everything is so simple. Tebas, with his characteristic confidence, has defenders who argue that he's doing what he must to protect Spanish football from bankruptcy. La Liga has implemented strict financial fair play rules to prevent clubs from spending more than they can afford, and Barça, with its historic debt, is a complicated case. From Tebas' perspective, sharing information, even if it's sensitive, is part of his job to ensure everyone plays by the same rules. Of course, to the Cules, this sounds like an excuse to target Barça, while other clubs, like a certain team from the capital, seem to get off scot-free. The rivalry between Barça and Tebas is nothing new, and every episode, from the Negreira case to the tensions over financial levers, adds fuel to the fire. Within Barça, Joan Laporta's position remains a mystery. The president, known for his fiery speeches and charisma, has opted for a low profile that isn't typical of him. Some say it's a masterstroke, letting Galán and the socios fight while he stays calm, like a coach saving his best cards for the second half. Others think Laporta is caught between two fires. On one side, the pressure from supporters who want blood. On the other, the need to negotiate with La Liga to move forward with the club's plans. Let's not forget that Barça is in full reconstruction, not just of the team but also of the stadium and its finances. Every misstep could be costly, and Laporta knows it. So, Cules, keep the faith, keep supporting the team, and stay tuned, because this story has more twists than a Dembélé dribble on his best day.